Three upperclassmen surrounded a skinny kid with glasses by the school lockers, their laughter echoing through the hallway as they tormented their helpless victim. When an unfamiliar young black man stepped in to defend the weak, the bullies had no idea they were making the biggest mistake of their lives. "Know your place," the ringleader hissed, shoving the defender and never suspecting that in just a few hours, this same person would walk into their classroom, not as a student, but as their new history teacher. What happened the moment these bullies realized their error didn't just change their lives, it transformed the entire school forever. You know those moments in life when you think you've got everything figured out, and then reality just laughs right in your face? Well, that's exactly what happened to me, Marcus Johnson, on my very first morning walking through the doors of Westfield High School. 23 years old, master's degree in history tucked away in my back pocket, and a heart full of dreams about changing the world through education. Man, was I naive. But let me start from the beginning. I woke up at 5 in the morning, even though classes didn't start until 8. The excitement wouldn't let me sleep. Can you imagine? First day as a history teacher, and I'm feeling like a kid before Christmas morning. My mama always used to tell me, "Marcus, if you want people to respect you, you better act like you deserve it." Thanks, Mama, for that wisdom, though it doesn't always work the way you'd expect in the real world. I picked out my best shirt, this light blue one that my sister said brought out my eyes, and pressed black pants without a single wrinkle, tied my tie 3 times until I got the knot just right. Standing there looking at myself in the mirror thinking, all right, Marcus, ready to show these kids that history can actually be exciting? Good grief, if only I knew what kind of history lesson I was about to get myself. The drive to school took about 20 minutes. I had Miles Davis playing. Jazz always calmed my nerves. Drumming my fingers on the steering wheel to the beat, mentally rehearsing my opening speech. "Welcome to history class. I'm Mr. Johnson, and I'm here to show you that the past is very much alive in our present." Sounded pretty good, right? The school greeted me with morning chaos. Hundreds of teenagers rushing to their lockers, laughter, shouting, the clang of metal doors. Your typical American high school, brick building from the 70s with hallways that echoed every footstep. Smelled like disinfectant mixed with that unique school scent. You know, chalk dust, teenage sweat, and hormones all rolled into one. I'm walking down the main corridor when I hear these sounds that just made my heart sink. You know those sounds? The laughter of predators and the quiet whimpers of prey. I stopped and listened. Yeah, that's it. Classic school bullying scene unfolding right around the corner. Turning the corner, I see a picture that was painfully familiar to me. This skinny kid with thick glasses is pressed back against the lockers, while 3 upperclassmen circle him like a pack of wolves. One of them, this big blonde guy in a football jersey with warriors across the chest, is holding the kid's backpack way up high, swinging it back and forth like some kind of trophy. "Come on, nerd, jump higher." The blonde kid is laughing, clearly enjoying every second. "Maybe then you can reach your precious little books." His buddies are snickering like hyenas. One of them, this red-headed guy whose face looked like someone had thrown freckles at it, is filming the whole thing on his phone. "This is definitely going on TikTok," he's cackling. #loser. The third member of this charming group, a dark-haired kid in some designer jacket that probably cost more than my monthly salary, gives the victim a shove with his elbow. "Hey, Four Eyes, what you got in that backpack anyway? Mommy pack you a peanut butter sandwich?" The kid with the glasses, he looked about 15, thin as a rail, with hair sticking up like he'd been struck by lightning. He's trying to reach for his bag but can't even get close. Tears are rolling down his cheeks, but he's trying to hide them, turning his face away. Man, that just hit me right in the gut. Something clicked inside me at that moment. Maybe it was memories of my own childhood when I stood in similar situations. Maybe it was my upbringing. Mom always taught me to stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. Or maybe it was just basic human decency that wouldn't let me walk on by. I walked up to the group, trying to look calm and confident. "Hey guys," I said in a voice that was gentle but firm. "How about you give him his backpack back? We're all here to learn after all." The blonde kid slowly turned toward me, and I could see that spark in his eyes that I knew all too well. the spark of someone who's used to getting away with whatever he wants. He looked me up and down, sizing me up with this dismissive, arrogant look that comes from people who think they're better than everyone else. "And who exactly are you?" he asked, taking a step toward me. I noticed he was a good head taller than me and probably outweighed me by 40 pounds. "Another weakling coming to help his little buddy?" He shoved me in the shoulder, not hard but rough enough to make his point. The push was calculated, provocative. He was testing me, seeing how I'd react. "Get lost before you find yourself in trouble," he added with a smirk. His voice had that confidence of someone who's never faced real consequences for his actions. I felt the blood rushing to my face, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Look, I'm just asking you to act like human beings," I replied, helping the kid with glasses get back on his feet after another shove had knocked him down. "Like human beings?" The redhead snorted, putting his phone away. "Maybe you should learn your place in this school." And that's when I heard what I'd hoped I wouldn't hear in 2024. He looked at the color of my skin, and in that look was everything. Contempt, superiority, that same hatred that gets passed down from generation to generation like some cursed inheritance. The blonde kid, who I later found out was named Travis, grabbed me by my shirt. The fabric stretched, and I heard a seam pop somewhere. "Who the hell do you think you are anyway?" he hissed in my face. His breath smelled like energy drinks and mint gum. "I've never seen you around here before." "You knew?" He smiled, and that smile was full of malice. "Well then, let me explain the rules. We run things around here, and people like you," he pointed at me like I was some kind of museum exhibit, "know their place." "People like me?" I repeated, carefully pulling away from his grip. I wanted to grab him by the collar and explain a few things about life, but I knew that would only make things worse. "I'm not looking for trouble. Just give the kid his stuff back." "Or what?" the dark-haired kid in the designer jacket asked mockingly. "You gonna tell your mommy?" By this point, a crowd of students had gathered around us. Some were pulling out phones, others just standing there watching like it was some kind of show. I could see in their eyes this mix of curiosity, fear, and that sick excitement that grabs people when they witness conflict. "You know what?" Travis said, stepping even closer to me. I could feel the aggression radiating off him, like heat from a furnace. "Since you're such a hero, maybe you can show us what you're made of." He shoved me hard, making me stumble backward. I nearly crashed into the group of onlookers. The laughter from his friends rang in my ears like nails on a chalkboard. Right then, like magic, the bell rang. Students started heading to their classes reluctantly, like they were disappointed the show was over. Travis threw the backpack on the floor in front of the kid with glasses and books scattered across the hallway. "See you around, hero," he said, walking past me so close our shoulders touched. "And remember, this school has its own rules." After they left, I helped the kid pick up his scattered books. My hands were shaking from adrenaline and suppressed rage. "What's your name?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Danny," he answered quietly, adjusting his broken glasses. "Thanks for standing up for me. But you shouldn't have. They're gonna come after you now, too." I smiled even though everything inside me was boiling. "Don't worry about that. Just stay away from them, okay?" After walking Danny to his class, I headed to the faculty lounge. My heart was still pounding like crazy. I stopped in the bathroom to pull myself together and looked in the mirror. Same Marcus Johnson as half an hour ago, but something had changed in my eyes. The naivety had evaporated. "Welcome to the real world, teacher," I said to my reflection. "Hope you're ready for whatever comes next." I knew this day was going to be the beginning of something bigger. I just had no idea how much bigger. The first two periods went like a dream come true. My 10th grade students were hanging on every word as I told them about the civil rights movement, like I was sharing the secrets of the universe or something. Some of them even asked questions. Real, thoughtful questions, not just the usual, "Is this gonna be on the test?" that I was expecting. This one girl, Sarah, raised her hand and asked, "Mr. Johnson, how did people find the strength to keep fighting when it seemed like nothing was changing?" Dang, if she only knew how relevant that question was about to become for me in just a few hours. I felt like I was on top of the world. Maybe I really can make a difference in this world, I thought, watching my students' eyes light up with understanding. What a fool I was, building castles in the air. Lunch break started at 11:30. I decided to take a walk around the school courtyard to get a better feel for the atmosphere. In the cafeteria, I grabbed a turkey sandwich. Didn't look too appetizing, but hey, a man's got to eat. Found myself a free spot at a table by the window and started eating while watching the students. That's when I heard those familiar voices. At the next table over sat my morning fan club, Travis and his buddies. They were talking loud enough for half the cafeteria to hear, but pretending like they were having some private conversation. Did you see that guy this morning? Kyle, the redhead, was laughing. Thinks he's some kind of superhero. Freaking Batman or something. Come on, Kyle, Travis replied, taking a bite of his burger that was about the size of my head. Just another one who doesn't know how things work around here. But he'll figure it out real quick. I kept chewing my flavorless sandwich, trying not to show that I could hear every single word they were saying. Inside, everything was boiling, but I forced myself to stay calm. The third guy, Brandon, the one in the designer jacket, leaned toward his friends and said in this conspiratorial tone, "My mom works on the school board. She says these people often think they're entitled to everything. Probably got his position through some quota system." The piece of sandwich got stuck in my throat. These people, quota system. Good Lord, and here I thought conversations like that were left back in the last century. How wrong I was. Hey, do you remember that new history teacher they introduced at assembly? Kyle asked, stirring his chocolate milk. Wonder what he's like. Hopefully not as boring as Mrs. Henderson. Mrs. Henderson, as I found out later, was their previous history teacher, an elderly woman who retired after 30 years of teaching. From what my colleagues told me, she was strict but fair. Johnson, I think, Travis shrugged. We'll see. If he's too strict, my dad will have a word with the principal. He's got connections. Ah, of course, Daddy will fix all the problems. How could I forget about that classic scheme? Rich kids used to mommy and daddy buying their way out of any trouble. I got up from the table, tossed what was left of my sandwich in the trash, and headed for the exit. I needed some fresh air before I did something stupid. The school courtyard was surprisingly quiet. Most students preferred staying inside. It was chilly outside, and the wind was rustling the leaves on the trees. I walked around the perimeter of the football field trying to calm down. You knew this wasn't going to be easy, I told myself, but you can't let them break you. Too many kids depend on what kind of teacher you become. When the bell rang, I headed back inside. Time to prepare for the next classes. In my classroom, a small room on the second floor with windows facing the courtyard, I spread my materials out on the desk and went over my lesson plan one more time. Someone knocked on the door. I looked up and saw Danny, the same kid I'd helped that morning. "Mr. Johnson?" he asked uncertainly, peeking into the classroom. "Yeah, come on in, Danny. How's it going? Did you get your glasses fixed?" He nodded, adjusting the frame that was now held together with electrical tape. "Thanks again for this morning, but that's not why I'm here." "What's up?" Danny looked around, making sure nobody could hear us. I wanted to warn you. Travis and his friends are planning something. I heard them talking about how the new history teacher is too young and needs to be tested." I leaned back in my chair. "Thanks for the heads up, Danny. But don't worry about it. I can handle myself." "You don't understand," the kid insisted, stepping closer. "They can be really vicious. Travis has influential parents. His dad owns half the town. And also Danny hesitated like he was afraid to say the next words. "What else, Danny?" "He doesn't like people who are different from him, if you know what I mean." Oh yeah, I knew exactly what he meant. Racism is like a family curse, passed down from father to son. And judging by Travis's behavior, his family was no exception. "Danny, you're a good kid," I said, "and I appreciate you looking out for me. But I'm not going to run from problems. If they want to test me, let them try." The bell rang, announcing the start of the next period. Danny nodded and headed for the door. "Be careful, Mr. Johnson. They're worse than they seem." After he left, I was alone with my thoughts. In a few minutes, 11th grade was supposed to walk into this classroom, and I knew that among them would be my morning acquaintances. The first students to enter were the regular kids, quiet, average, the ones who make up the backbone of any school. They took their seats, pulled out notebooks, got ready for class. Normal kids who just wanted to get an education. And then they walked in. Travis, Kyle, and Brandon burst into the classroom like a hurricane, talking loud and laughing. They claimed seats in the back row, their presence instantly changing the atmosphere in the room. The other students seemed to shrink, trying to become invisible. Travis stopped dead in his tracks when he saw me at the board. His face, tanned, smug face of someone who'd been told his whole life that he was special, twisted with surprise. "Welcome to history class," I said, trying to keep my voice professional. "My name is Mr. Johnson, and I'm your new teacher." Kyle and Brandon exchanged glances, then looked at Travis, who was still standing by the door, with his mouth hanging open like he'd seen a ghost. "Please, take your seats," I continued, enjoying the moment. Travis slowly walked to his desk, never taking his eyes off me. His swagger was gone. That confident arrogance I'd seen that morning had vanished. Now he moved carefully like a predator who suddenly realized he might become the prey. His friends followed him, whispering nervously to each other. I could hear fragments of their conversation. "That's him. This morning. What now?" I started the class by going over the curriculum. This year we'll be studying key moments in American history with special attention to the civil rights era and social change. A muffled laugh came from the back row. Travis leaned over to Kyle and whispered something in his ear. Kyle nodded, but his laugh sounded uncertain. "Any questions about the curriculum?" I asked, looking directly at Travis. For several seconds he was silent, clearly weighing his options. Then he slowly raised his hand. His face had that cocky smirk again, but I could see uncertainty in his eyes. "Actually, there is," he said slowly, drawing out the words. "How objective will you be able to teach these topics?" The whole class went silent. The question hung in the air like smoke from a cigarette, acrid and hard to clear. I understood the subtext. He wasn't asking about my qualifications as a teacher. He was asking whether I, a black man, could objectively talk about racism and discrimination. This little punk thought he was going to stump me. "History speaks for itself, Mr. Walker, Travis Walker." Of course, Walker, familiar name. Now I understood where his confidence in his own immunity came from. "Mr. Walker," I repeated. "Facts are facts, regardless of who's teaching them." "Well, yeah, sure," Travis smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Just wondering if there might be too much, how should I put this, one-sided presentation of the material." The tension in the classroom became almost tangible. Other students were looking back and forth between Travis and me, understanding that something bigger than a usual question about curriculum was happening. Some of them were pulling out their phones, getting ready to record. In our time, any conflict can go viral in minutes. "One-sided presentation?" I asked, taking a step toward his desk. "And what side do you think I'd be representing, Mr. Walker?" Travis realized he'd painted himself into a corner, but it was too late to back down. "Well, you know," he glanced at his friends, looking for support. "Sometimes people exaggerate certain problems from the past." "Problems from the past," I repeated slowly. "Interesting. What specific problems are you referring to?" The class held its breath in anticipation. Even those students who usually didn't pay attention to what was happening were now watching us with tense focus. "We're on the edge of the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Stay tuned to see how our hero puts everyone in their place." I took a deep breath, feeling that rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was the moment I'd been waiting for my whole life. Not on purpose, mind you, but every black man in America knows that sooner or later he's going to have to stand up for himself and his dignity. "Mr. Walker," I said, stepping even closer to his desk. My voice stayed calm, but there was steel in it, the kind I inherited from my grandfather, a man who lived through Jim Crow and taught me to never bow my head. "History is based on documented facts and evidence. If you have specific questions about the material, I'll be happy to answer them." Travis leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest in this defensive pose. His confidence was starting to crack, but he wasn't ready to give up yet. "I'm just saying that some teachers might be invested in certain interpretations of events." "Interesting," I said, stopping right in front of his desk. The distance between us was minimal now. I could see his hands trembling, despite his attempts to look confident. "What interpretation are you referring to?" "Well, you know," Travis shot a quick glance at his friends. Kyle was staring at the floor, and Brandon had suddenly become fascinated with something outside the window. He wasn't getting any backup. Sometimes people blow certain problems from the past way out of proportion. The class froze in tense silence. I could hear only the ticking of the wall clock and the barely audible breathing of 27 teenagers who understood that something important was happening. Mr. Walker, I said, my voice getting firmer but still staying professional. Could you be more specific? Which exact problems from the past do you think are blown out of proportion? Travis felt like he'd painted himself into a corner. His face turned red, not from shame, but from anger at being put in this uncomfortable position. He hadn't expected the teacher to respond so directly to his provocations. I just think some things get hyped up more than they need to be, he mumbled. Like all this stuff about slavery and discrimination. The air in the classroom became even more tense. Several students gasped in shock. One girl in the front row covered her mouth with her hand. Even Kyle and Brandon exchanged looks that said, "Dude, you went too far," written all over their faces. I slowly nodded, feeling that familiar rage rising inside me, the one I'd spent my whole life learning to control. I see. So you think slavery and racial discrimination are blown out of proportion? Well, that was a long time ago, Travis mumbled, starting to realize he'd gone too far, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. Why do we have to keep talking about it? And that's when I delivered my knockout punch. This morning, when you told me to know my place and made comments about the color of my skin, was that a long time ago too? I asked calmly. The effect was instant and devastating. Travis's eyes went wide with shock. His mouth fell open, and his face turned white as a sheet. He realized that his mourning victim and his new teacher were the same person. The entire class turned to look at him, and some students started pulling out their phones. Whispers rolled through the classroom like a wave. That's him, the teacher, this morning. I didn't, Travis stammered, his confidence evaporating like smoke. Mr. Walker, I continued, my voice staying professionally calm, but every word fell like a hammer. This morning, you physically pushed me, humiliated a defenseless student, and made racist remarks. And now, finding out I'm your teacher, you continue to demonstrate the same prejudices. Brandon tried to jump in, seeing his friend drowning. Maybe this is a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I replied, not taking my eyes off Travis. Your friend showed his true colors. And you know what's the saddest part? The history you think is blown out of proportion is continuing right now, in this classroom. Travis hung his head, his face burning with shame and anger. He understood that he'd fallen into the trap of his own prejudices. His whole world of privilege and immunity was crumbling right before his eyes. But you know what, Mr. Walker? I said, and my tone unexpectedly softened. You have a choice. You can keep carrying this hatred inside you, or you can use this moment as a lesson. I turned to the whole class, and my speech gained that power that only comes when you're speaking the truth. History teaches us that prejudice is based on ignorance and fear. When we get to know each other better, when we see other people as individuals rather than stereotypes, we grow as human beings. I looked at Travis again. This morning you saw me as a threat because I didn't look like you. But I'm the same person who stood up for the weak and who's now standing before you as your teacher. Nothing has changed except your perception. Travis slowly raised his head. There was no more contempt in his eyes, just confusion and something that looked like shame. Maybe for the first time in his life, he was facing the consequences of his actions. Mr. Johnson, he said quietly, his voice shaking, I apologize for this morning and for what I said just now. The whole class went quiet, waiting for my reaction. I could see in their eyes a mix of surprise, respect, and curiosity. This moment could be a turning point, not just for Travis, but for all of them. Apology accepted, Mr. Walker, I said. But remember, words have power and actions have consequences. Next time you see injustice, you'll have a choice. Become part of the problem or part of the solution. The bell announced the end of class, but nobody was in a hurry to leave. The atmosphere in the room was completely different from what it had been at the beginning. Students started gathering their things slowly. still processing what had happened. Travis lingered when the others were leaving. He approached the teacher's desk with his head down. "Mr. Johnson," he said, and I could hear something new in his voice. Humility. "I really am sorry. My father, he taught me a lot of things, but not everything was good." "I understand, Travis," I replied, using his first name for the first time. "But now you're old enough to choose which lessons to accept and which ones to leave in the past." He nodded and headed for the door. At the doorway, he stopped and turned around. "What happens now? Are you going to tell the principal?" I smiled, genuinely for the first time all day. "Travis, I'm not going to tell anyone anything, but you are. Not to me, not to the principal, but to yourself. Every time you want to put someone down because they're different from you." When he left, Danny peeked into the classroom. "Mr. Johnson, I heard what happened. Everyone's talking about it." "What are they saying, Danny?" "That you put Travis in his place, but you did it with dignity. That you're a real teacher." I sat down at my desk, feeling the exhaustion that had been building all day. "You know, Danny, today we all learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most significant changes don't happen in history textbooks, but right here in our daily interactions with each other. Do you think he'll really change?" I looked out the window, where Travis was walking across the school courtyard alone, without his usual entourage. "I don't know, Danny, but now he has a choice, and that's more than he had this morning." The next day, Travis came to class first. He sat in the front row and listened carefully to every word. And when I was talking about the civil rights movement, he raised his hand and asked a thoughtful question about how ordinary people can stand up against injustice. Kyle and Brandon sat in the back row, exchanging glances and clearly not understanding what was happening to their friend. But Travis wasn't paying attention to them anymore. After class, he lingered again. "Mr. Johnson," he said, "could I bring Danny here? I want to apologize to him too." I nodded. "Of course, Travis. That's the right thing to do." Later, when Danny came to the classroom and heard Travis's apology, his face lit up with surprise, then a tentative smile. "It's okay," he said. "We all make mistakes sometimes." I realized that my first day as a teacher had become not just the beginning of a career, but an opportunity to change someone's worldview. History kept being written every day, and I was glad to be part of that process. Because in the end, the most important history lessons aren't the ones written in textbooks. They're the ones we teach each other every day through our words, actions, and choices. And today we all, Travis, Danny, the other students, and me, became part of a story that could change the future. That evening, driving home to the same Miles Davis jazz, I thought about how Mama was right. If you want to earn respect, act like you deserve it. But sometimes you have to show people first that they underestimated you. And you know what? Tomorrow I'm going back to that school because there's still work to be done.